Thanks for having me over. It's my second time in Bucharest. I'm very much looking forward to a great day again. There are a few familiar faces in the audience, a handful of new ones as well. So let's see what we get going this time. I promised to speak a little bit about where the DMP market is going, where it should be going, and where advertising or marketing at large is going. The title is From CTR Obsession to an Online Currency. A little bit about the journey from the DMP of yesterday, which might still be the DMP of today, to where we hopefully will get. As for myself, I'm currently in a CMO office, so I'll be giving you a marketer perspective on things. I do come from the DMP space, so I've worked at both Enreach and CSense, have about 15 years of experience dealing with mobile technologies, internet technologies, data technologies, of which 7 years in the DMP space. So that's quite a while in such a new or novel industry. And I've always been focusing on trying to make technology work in a commercial setting. I do have to take the opportunity to put one advertising slide on behalf of my current company, Ardoq. So we are a company that helps large enterprises, retail, banking, finance, industry, oil and gas, insurance, airlines transform digitally, and to do this in a privacy compliant and well-governed fashion. One of the use cases of our technology is GDPR compliance. So if you're interested, go on the website, have a look, and reach out if you want to know more. Then going to the actual deck itself. So instead of looking at what does a DMP do, what does it do for you, what could it do for you, I'll actually talk about what does a marketer want? What does a CMO want? What do I want? And what does this have to do with data? I know the text is very small, I know it's hard for you to read that far, but this is really what I want. It's a definition of marketing effectiveness from Wikipedia, and it states a lot of blah, 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 with one key line: positive results, both in the short and long term. This is actually very against online traditionally, which is very, very short-term obsessed. People are looking at individual campaigns and individual campaign KPIs. They're looking at things like click rate, a very short-term metric, something I call a vanity metric. Doesn't really mean crap for my business. It's a nice KPI somewhere, and we can of course talk a lot about it, and I'm not saying it'll go away, it won't. It does play a role, but it's not the goal of what we as marketers strive for. Now this is kind of like looking at these two temporal definitions, short-term and long-term. If we're looking at what is a positive result in the short term, then we do get to CTRs, conversion rates, cost per acquisition. These are campaign level metrics, and they really are the epicenter of what everyone in digital advertising likes to talk about, because they're so easy to measure. They're also relatively easy to impact. And there is a lot of noise in them. That may mean that the noise is masking the signal, or it may mean that there actually is a signal, but it's very, very hard to say. It's also extremely hard to replicate the success in an individual campaign that took place at a specific time, in a specific context, towards a specific audience, with everything happening around that user seeing that advert. Now, if you then look at the longer term goals, it looks very, very different. I have average revenue per user. How much money am I making per customer? Doesn't really matter whether my industry is B2C or B2B. I have customers. I look to retain them for a long time, and I look to maximize how much money I can make off these customers over the entire duration of their lifetime. I'm also very concerned about Net Promoter Score, especially in B2B. So are my customers happy? Do they feel they're getting value? Not all of my marketing is focused on new customer acquisition. I'm also very focused on making sure that my current customers feel that they're getting well serviced. I need to reach out to them as well, keep them informed, keep them feeling happy. And of course, customer lifetime value. There's no point attracting short-term customers with huge promotional efforts just to get them to buy in on a bargain somewhere and then they'll never repurchase anything at a higher margin. It will probably deliver a very attractive looking campaign in the short term. You may have won a batch of new customers, but they're probably not that profitable. So actually, as a marketer, my business level metrics are almost all long term, which is kind of hard in the digital world, but it's not impossible. Now, I want the business level KPIs, I want the business level view, that's what actually matters. What I need, again, as a very pragmatic marketer, I need automation. Quite simply, I can't afford to have things be executed the way they have been before. It's too costly, it's too manual, there are too many steps. And I'm not just talking about display campaigns, there's a whole world beyond display campaigns that all is interrelated, especially now around data. Now, I also need better data. I need better data to both communicate with my current customers, knowing what their concerns, interests, pains are. So I need better data to address my current customers better, and I absolutely need better data to prospect for new customers. And I need to do this in an increasingly automated fashion. And this is what we jointly in the industry call programmatic. Again, I'm looking at a lot of things. I have programmatic media. I have one-to-one marketing, which today email is the most efficient form of delivery for. This is very technology driven. There's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of it that is helping me daily. There's a lot of it that is also pushing these vanity KPIs, into my vision, that is just blurring things, that is prohibiting me from seeing the long-term goal and just sticking to the plan. I also need to look at the customer journey. I need to prospect, I need to convert, and I need to retain. These are very different things, but I need to somehow make the same channels, the same data sets, or at least the same technology foundations work for all. And then on the megatrend side, I need to have an ever-increasing focus on privacy, quality, and transparency. Customers expect us to know who they are, yet they equally expect us to be very, very conscious of what we do with their data, and to also do that in a transparent way. So it's not easy, actually. This is what I'm looking at. The DMP side, programmatic advertising, currently non-personal information. Who knows how that will turn out in a years and a half time when the privacy directive ultimately comes out. Today under GDPR, cookies are non-personal. That may change in 18 months or 12 months, however long it takes for Brussels to churn out the privacy directive. On the other side, I have the personal data side, which has been there for a while. It's just called marketing automation, and it revolves around email as the communication channel. But increasingly, email is, of course, connected to my website, which is, of course, connected to my programmatic advertising. So these two are already converging, or they have converged, and they will continue to do so ever more. Then from the top, as said, I have GDPR and transparency requirements being dropped on me, or imposed on me. And yes, they can be a very good thing. They should be considered a very good thing. So at the end of the day, when you need to do things more transparently, when you need to do them in a more compliant and privacy-aware way, it also helps you clarify internally and externally what it is that you actually need to do and how you do it. It's far easier to obfuscate things than to simplify them. Now again, I have very different KPIs on both sides. I need to somehow make them fit. Because even if I'm looking at the long-term view of wanting to have happier customers, retain them for longer, make sure we can mutually build business together, because otherwise they will not pay me more, especially not over time, I still somehow need to link that into campaign-level goals, campaign-level metrics. But I can't allow that to become the sole focus. It's easy to set yourself KPIs which you know you can game, or which you know you can fool and fake, and then present to others how you're doing great success in marketing. It doesn't really help the company long term. Again, just to give a bigger picture, I know you can't read the labels, that's not the intention of this slide either, but programmatic advertising or display advertising is just one aspect of what a marketer is looking at. The left-hand side is a sort of a rounded overview of various different content marketing related activities. The right-hand circle is the life cycle of just one, the red box, advocacy. So there's a ton of stuff. It's not like I wake up every day and think about the next display campaign. There's a lot of things. And they all somehow need to make sense together. There's a lot of things that you need to somehow make work for your business. Now the trouble is that they all have a million moving parts. And again, this is now zooming back to display advertising. Even display advertising has a lot of moving parts. I have the creative, the message, what am I telling my prospects or my customers? I have the audience, who sees it? How well do I know and have control of that audience? How can I rest assured that that audience is what I think it is? How consistently can I sort of re-engage that same audience or find the same audience with the same definition? Where are the ads running? You know, the environment. In offline, it's very trivial to us. If you put a billboard next to a dumpster somewhere, or then if you run the same billboard next to an airport, you know, everyone intuitively understands they will work differently. Yet in digital, somehow, we don't necessarily make the connection that obviously. We expect if the user is the same, it'll work the same. It does not. Just because it's a digital channel doesn't make the context is irrelevant. It might even be more relevant than ever. It's just harder to get down to the detail and understand it and see it. Even more difficult to measure it. And again, with adding more measurement doesn't mean you add more clarity. Then there's a frequency aspect. How many times does a user need to see my message to recall it? How many times does a user need to see my message to take action on it? What is the optimal frequency? Again, a simple term frequency, incredibly difficult to deliver on. Even in one channel alone, almost a nightmarish endeavor to try and do across channels. And I know there's a bunch of agencies, actually every agency is saying that they do global frequency control, cross-channel, cross this, cross that. No, we don't really. We try to do it. No. We know where we should be going, but let's just face it. No one is today able to connect the channels into a coherent customer journey. That's the ambition. That's the nirvana. We're way, way, way off today. And all of these feed into a KPI. Maybe a CTR, which is an obvious KPI. Maybe a conversion rate, a conversion event. Maybe anything. But all of these are moving parts. It's very hard to optimize anything where everything is a moving part. It's really hard. It's borderline impossible. So kind of what I'm really looking for, and this again on a, wearing a couple of marketer hats on, being responsible for how we at Ardoq, for example, spend our money across every channel from search to display, to event marketing, to customer loyalty programs, to wining and dining our customers. There's a whole range of activities you can do as a marketer. What I'm really looking for is one thing, it's simplicity. I'm not looking for more complexity. That means in the previous equation, I'm looking to lock, or at least have transparency and stability in parts of those. If I'm supposed to optimize something, every time I give it a go, I need to spend money. So I can't afford to test out everything. It's commercially suicidal. None of us here can afford to test every combination, to keep testing every combination. Especially not if every single path in the equation keeps moving, keeps changing. Then you just end up throwing money somewhere and looking at some KPIs fiddle. You're not actually optimizing or anything. You're not learning anything either. So I'm looking for simplicity. I'm also looking for consistency as one ingredient of simplicity. I need some things in these equations to remain stable. Now sites, or you could say publishing brands, domains, or event partnerships, those remain relatively stable. In cases like Brat here with your DMP, the audience remains stable. Yes, the unique users in the segments keep going up and about, but the definitions for how they're constructed remain stable. And it's scalable. It's applicable across every site. It actually helps a lot as a marketer, because it makes it more predictable. It makes it more consistent. I can try out things, and I know that at least the audience remains stable. I know the sites remain stable. The frequency, a little this and that, can I control it or not? But at least I can legitimately say I'm now possible to test the creative. We all love saying that we're just going to throw something somewhere, and then it's the media's responsibility to deliver me conversions. No, it's not. The number one responsibility you have as a marketer is to make sure your message is the correct one for the correct audience. And not everyone needs to understand your message, not everyone needs to like it, not everyone needs to react to it. Actually, it's the polar opposite. You want those that you've defined as your customer personas, those that deliver long-term customer value, those that will stay with you for long-term and become good advocates for your products or services. You want them to react and resonate with your messaging. But you can't test the messaging either unless you can keep some of the other ingredients stable. You might get a really high CTR from a campaign, but if those clicking are completely the wrong audience, they'll not convert. Or you might attract a very sort of a bargain hunter group of users based on a very aggressive campaign, conversion campaign, but those are not really the people you want as customers, because they will not deliver a good long-term customer value. Again, short-term versus long-term. And yes, it's sometimes hard to explain to the board, why do I do things that in the short term seem stupid or counterintuitive, but I do them because I think I'm responsible for the long term, not the short term. So again, I don't really need more dashboards, I don't need more metrics, I don't need more KPIs, I definitely don't need more vanity KPIs, but I do need some metrics that I can trust and those that matter. Sadly, those metrics that matter are all longer-term horizon, and they're all more difficult to obtain, and they're all more difficult to link back to individual campaigns. On the other hand, who said that you need to attribute every single thing that happens long-term to an individual campaign that took place 4 months ago, or 3 months ago, or 2 months ago? It's not like customers convert when they see one campaign. That probably was the case when there was only one channel. I just didn't live when that was the case. But today there's an abundance of channels. We're all using multiple channels simultaneously, delivering differentiated campaigns in all of them over consistent time periods. So it's very hard to say which campaign where triggered what. We can sort of close our eyes and pray. I would probably be about as accurate as if we threw all of our time and effort into analyzing the digits. So again, I'm looking for data that makes my life easier, not more difficult. And this goes back to the same things. I'm looking for things that simplify my life. I'm looking for things that keeps the moving parts in a more manageable shape than otherwise would be. And if you can keep the audience definitions more consistent, that certainly helps. And again, it depends a lot on what type of marketer you are. But it certainly doesn't hurt anyone. So I want to be here. I want to look at the long term. I want to understand the long-term customer value implications of what we do, how we communicate. You could say sort of it's very undigital. It's not saying I'm against conversion measurement. Of course we track conversions. Of course we have conversion points measured. But we're not optimizing on interim conversions. We're optimizing on sales, net promoter score, and long-term customer value, which does make the campaign level measurement a little less interesting, actually, but not less important. It just puts the effort of measurement more into trying to understand what messaging resonates which again requires that you understand or you can fix the audience and you can control some other parameters. So it's actually more difficult than just looking at the individual campaigns. So from display, I'm really keeping it simple. Reach and frequency, those dealing in television are familiar with this phrase. I need to be as certain as I can, noting that you never really are certain that I'm reaching the right audience. And again, we're in a B2B space. Our customers are enterprise architects or chief digital officers or chief information officers or equivalent profiles or DPOs in GDPR. Now that being said, I can't afford to just be marketing at people with those specific job titles. I need a bit more reach around because none of the targeting I choose is 100% accurate anyway. Nothing ever is. So I need to be able to have a sufficiently granular target that delivers me a good enough reach, ideally covering all of those profiles in a target market with a good enough accuracy that ideally is consistent over time. So if I then try different messaging, I can actually validate that this messaging works better than this one towards the same audience. So if the audience changes, what the hell does the creative validation matter anyway? So I don't know who's responding to it anymore. And then the frequency part. And this is very, very hard. It's not even easy on the device level. Cookies are a very volatile means. But I do know that if I can message people once, they'll probably not even recall it an hour later. If I can message them 10 times over a week or a month, I have a good chance, or my chance at least increase. If I hammer them with the same ad 25 times a day over a full week, they'll just get very irritated. So it's not that difficult if you sort of simplify it a bit. And if you go back to the good old basics. And again, I'm sort of glad to see it is also becoming a more realistic goal. We are collectively in the advertising world cleaning up our acts. We're getting rid of crap inventory that does produce really nice CTRs on campaign level, but bots buy a lot less than humans. They do complete conversion goals, by the way, interim conversion goals. They don't sign paper on it with ink, like actually buy stuff, but they do sign up to white papers, they do sign up to email newsletters, they do all kinds of interim vanity metrics, yes. It's very good to see that inventory is becoming cleaner, though not clean, and data is also becoming more transparent and qualitative. And again, it's very simple. If you really don't know what the data is, don't bother using it because it's not worth anything anyway. You can say no. And at the end of the day, when you are the buyer, you do kind of get to influence the market as well. Not as a small company like ourselves, but when Procter & Gamble, Unilever, P&G, when we have companies like L'Oreal go public saying that they choose to opt out of crap inventory sources and nondescript third-party data, that does have a ripple effect on the whole industry. And again, there's one thing is the data, the other one is the inventory. It's also very refreshing to see increasingly publishers opening up their premium inventories to programmatic, because there are customers who are willing to buy that. There are customers who are willing to buy that at an incredibly high CPM. Again, it comes down to who you are, what the objectives are. If we, for example, are re-messaging our existing customers in premium display, I don't have any issues paying 100 euro CPM. It's still an incredibly good investment. And there are more companies with similar B2B propositions or niche propositions who can afford to pay those CPMs as well. But again, their needs or our needs is not mass market. If I mass market, it looks a little bit different. The fundamentals really don't change. Everyone appreciates value. Everyone appreciates transparency and quality. And yes, when you shift away from the short-term vanity metrics and obsessions on them like CTR, it does become possible to also take a longer-term view. So how to eat the elephant? You know, seems like a big thing. If you're saying, I would like to discontinue my addiction on CTRs and go beyond. There's this old saying that you can eat an elephant in pieces, and it actually is true. But you also need to be willing to sort of step out of a numerically validated stance where you can say, I can track everything. Just because we live in a data-driven, sort of almost infinitely measurable world doesn't mean you need to measure everything. Doesn't mean you always need to oblige by the numbers that you see. It's perfectly fine saying that, look, we really don't care about CTR, and then actually mean it as well, as in really mean it. And yes, you'll get some resistance internally. You know, there's always going to be some campaign manager saying, but the CTRs before were this. Yeah, they were. I'm just not that interested. It's a cultural change. But at the end of the day, if you take a longer-term view, and then you look back a year, half a year, it does work itself out. And it does make life easier. Because having more numbers does not make life better. It just makes it more complicated. So what to do, or what do? I take the long-term view. I want to build a marketing machine that is operating on long-term KPIs. And it does also mean taking ownership. The thing with short-term metrics is that it's so easy to shuffle them down an agency's throat. It's so easy to pass the responsibility to the media partner. You know, judge the performance of media supply partners based on their CTRs. You know, rate something based on some interim KPI they deliver. It's kind of you're passing or you're delegating responsibility to someone who should not have the responsibility in the first place. The media partners are not responsible for your messaging. They're not responsible for your product. They're not responsible for your holistic marketing, how you retain, address, treat your customers. They're not responsible for a fraction, not even a minuscule fraction of your customer experience. They're really media supply partners. Some can offer you more insights, which is greatly appreciated always. Some can offer you less, which is less great. But they're not responsible for your performance. You are. I'll take a very pragmatic example from a completely different context, events. Now, no one who's organizing events, pitching, especially in the B2B space, they will help you get leads. Now, they can't guarantee you'll close anything. They're just guaranteeing you the appropriate right audience with a sizing. There will be this many audiences attending this venue on these dates with these titles and job descriptions, and these companies, representing these companies. They don't guarantee that you'll sell anything. That's up to you. That's up to your messaging. That's up to your team on the ground. They're merely providing you an opportunity to be seen and heard by a particular audience. Media does the same in online. They're merely providing you an audience, giving you the ability for your message to be seen by an appropriate audience. That is defined well enough. Doesn't need to be perfect, it never is. But it is your responsibility.